Welcome back to the weekend wrap. No production, just my thoughts. As always, please like and subscribe and share with friends, colleagues, associates, relatives, enemies, anyone in between. Memberships are there, growing a little bit, so I appreciate that. Well, this weekend, obviously a bit anticlimactic. The best fight of the weekend got called off for, reasons that we've touched on in the previous video with Virgil Ortiz. So Amanda Stanionis wasn't kept on the card. It's not that they had sort of another opponent for him to keep busy with. So he's just lost payday all in all, which is a shame for him. Obviously, it's also a big shame to Virgil Ortiz and his career right now, and we don't necessarily know what's going on there. So yeah, it's that was a bit anticlimactic. But that being said, there were some decent fights on. Now, I don't remember names of every fight, or of every fighter, I should say. So what I will say, starting with Friday, that was a decent card in Mexico. Diego Pacheco headlined that one against Manuel Gallegos. The fight on the undercard for that, though, Jonathan Rodriguez versus Israel Gonzalez, that was a really good fight, and that was for super flyweight contendership. Now, both of those names should ring a bell to people, purely because they were both Bam Rodriguez's previous last two opponents. Jonathan Rodriguez is who he won the flyweight WBO title off of, and Israel Gonzalez is the last person he defended his WBC super flyweight title against before vacating it to move back down to flyweight. And that fight didn't disappoint at all. It was a scrap. There was some good technical moments at the early outset. You had Israel Gonzalez again working Jonathan Rodriguez's body. He was sort of digging to the body, and you could tell that was really having an effect on Rodriguez. But Rodriguez would counter back with sort of the better work up top, the heavier shots, even though they weren't necessarily always the most accurate, or he wasn't the most active in the fight. And Gonzalez probably outlanded him, I would say, probably outworked him a little bit, but the cleaner work did come from Rodriguez. So the fight ended in a split decision draw. It was I think it was 96-94 both guys, and then 95-95 even in the last scorecard. So they said they potentially run that one back, and if they do, that was a good fight. I definitely look to see it again, especially if it means that they get to fight some of the contenders, or you have both of them have different cracks at different champions and then maybe come back again if that doesn't kind of work out. But that was a great fight. Diego Pacheco showed again why he's still one of the hottest prospects out of the US at the moment. Again, he started his career at the age of 17, now 22. I think he was 22 this year, so he's still not even that close to 23 yet, if memory serves me correctly. He's going from strength to strength. He now goes to 19-0 with 16 KOs, I think it is, or 15 KOs. So you could tell he's a power puncher. He was in a very small ring. It was a 16 by 16 foot ring, obviously, because a lot of the other fights on the card were smaller guys, with exception to his younger brother, Federico Pacheco, who was a heavyweight, 256 pounds. He's about 19 years old. He opened the card, and I guess you could really tell from in there, him and the other guy in there, that how small that ring was for sort of like the bigger guys on the show. But it was a fun card. Didn't look like there was a huge amount of people in the crowd, so I don't know either how they're going to promote those Mexico shows, or if they are almost like tax write-offs, because I can imagine that the cost of doing the events themselves aren't actually that expensive, and I'm assuming that the money that you pay everyone sort of on those cards is very, very minimal, and it's a case of it's still more money than they'd be making if they was I guess, out on the road selling fruit or something like that, or just doing manual labor jobs in and around the city, or put that in conjunction with whatever they might do as a pastime as well. So I can imagine those events don't probably cost that much to do, which is probably a reason why they do them, even though there's not a huge crowd that sort of joins in and participates. But having said that, the crowds that are there are very passionate, very loud, very boisterous, and I guess, yeah, it just makes sense. Again, not particularly expensive to run, so maybe that's just why they're worth doing on sort of those weeks when there isn't any like major other cards sort of going ahead, or they don't have anything else planned. But that being said, it was a fun card. Every time the Mexico cards are there, even whether I know any of the guys or not, or the women in some cases, I always watch them because they always deliver some kind of good quality fan friendly action. So moving on to Saturday's fights, I haven't watched everything on the DAZN card. There was no real point, just due to sort of Stanionis and Virgil Ortiz not being on there. Golden Boy also, I guess you had Joseph Diaz, who blew the weight. He was 6 pounds overweight going onto the scales. So I don't know how that managed to happen. I think his opponent, they said that the only way that he would be allowed to fight Joseph is if he had to eat himself up to 138 pounds in order for them to allow the contest to go ahead, which is it's a strange one. I don't think I've heard of that before, but I mean, I guess it makes sense. You've got to be at a similar weight to your opponent at that point in order for the fight to go ahead. But that Joseph Diaz, they've got to get that situation sorted. Like, that's not the first time he's blown weight. I think that's like the 4th time in his last 7 fights that he's not managed the weight cut correctly or whatever. So that's something that needs to get sorted out, and this stuff clearly only seems to be happening on Golden Boy Promotions cards, like in terms of frequency. So they need to get themselves in check. Oscar De La Hoya needs to get himself in check. Bernard Hopkins and whoever else is behind the scenes. I think Eric Gomez might still be over there. That all needs to be worked out. What also needs to be addressed is, again, I think there was 4 fights on the main card. I've only seen 2 of them in full, and of the 2 that's in full, one you've got Marlon Esparza versus Gabriela Celeste Alanis. Now, Alanis came in with a WBO title. Marlon Esparza had the WBA and the WBC. And yeah, it was a unification bout. The scores and the cards were very reminiscent of the cards last week of Franchon Cruz DAZN and Savannah Marshall, whereby there was one card which was utterly disgusting. So one of the judges, I don't remember the names, I didn't actually take any of them down, but they gave Marlon Esparza the fight 99-91. Nobody can look at that fight and tell me that Gabriela Alanis only won 1 round in that fight, regardless of whether you think Esparza won or not. That's fabrication of the highest order. And it's funny because a lot of people say that in Texas, they prefer activity and work rate and like sort of high volume and come forward fighters. Well, if that's the case, then Alanis should have won, because she was the aggressive come forward fighter for the majority of the fight. Marlon Esparza did probably produce the sharper work throughout the majority of the bout, but she was outlanded and just out volumed for the entire fight. Alanis, her work rate was something that Marlon Esparza was struggling to keep up with for a lot of time, and she had to. Basically, there was a lot of time where Marlon was doing dirty little tricks to try and just grab breaks, using her shoulder to push Alanis off. using a forearm to you know, to sort of get underneath her throat and almost like choke her to get her out of the range. And the referee on about 6 or 7 different times warned her about the use of the forearm, and warned her about 2 or 3 times about the use of the shoulder. Yet at not one point did he call a halt to the you know, to the action, to either give her a warning, like a proper warning, or to deduct a point. Now, if you're gonna admonish her on that many occasions, I'm sure that's then worthy of a point deduction. But the scorecards read 91, it was 99, 91, it was 97, 93, and then it was 95, 95. Now, quite frankly, the 95, 95 was probably the most accurate card out of all of them. It was kind of a 5-5, a 6-4 either way type fight, and that's not just you know, being generous. If you watch the fight, it was literally that. The 97, 93 was, again, it was a little wide, but okay, surely there were a couple swing rounds in there, so you could maybe swing 1 or 2 Marlin's way if you really wanted to. But for her to sweep 9 rounds on one judge's scorecard, it just goes to show you, number one, how corrupt the Golden Boy judging system is, and number two, I guess everyone says that you can't go to Texas and get a fair shake against a hometown fighter, and if that's the case, this definitely doesn't dispel that notion. So yeah, it wasn't a great, especially for, you know, sort of the level of fight that it was. It was a fun, action-packed fight. It deserved a lot better than the scorecards that were read out. But Marlon Esparza now goes on to hopefully get that undisputed fight. Her and Senicia Estrada carried on their war of words on Twitter afterwards. You know, funny, I remember Senicia called her fat ass and said that, yeah, I'll come back up to your weight and beat that fat ass again. I was like, well, yeah. Actually, you know, I was gonna say something, but to be fair, like, I'm gonna leave that alone, because it's not my place to critique people's body compositions on here. But yeah, it's mad that you can call someone a fat ass that only weighs 112 pounds. It's anyway. So I saw parts of the Joseph Diaz fight. I only really saw like the last 2 rounds. It looked like it was a fairly decent fight, so I'm gonna have to go back and watch that a little later on. Floyd Schofield against what's his name? Sorry, I don't even remember the guy's name. All I remember is the braids. Now, Schofield actually floored the guy 3 times. I thought he was going to get him out of there. For some reason, the guy managed to hang on, and then even laced a very nasty cut onto Floyd Schofield's face at the end of the 9th round. It was a head clash. His head basically came in. He had braids, and I guess they must have been really coarse and tight, because he's sort of like he's gone in head. It was an unintentional headbutt, but yeah, it sliced his cheek clean open. It was a very, very deep gash, and it was one of those ones where you could tell that if someone punched that, not only would it keep opening up, but like it was open so much you could feel the nerves underneath. So for Schofield to carry on into that 10th round and still battle, knowing that sort of that's there and you can kind of feel that, was pretty brave of him. But he won every round with maybe the exception of the 10th, but I think on all the judges' scorecards he got every round. They gave him every single round, but the 10th one, there was an argument maybe he didn't win that because he was on the back foot, barely striking, and yeah, the opponent was definitely looking to attack. So with regards to that, I feel like Schofield, you know, he's a 135 guy, but he looks muscle bound. He's 5'7". He's definitely another guy that could move up maybe to 140 in a couple years time. But his issue obviously is because he's only 5'7". There's not a huge amount to carry the additional on the frame. So 140 would probably be a ceiling. I doubt he could really go any higher than that. But he's a good little pro, and he's only 20 years old, so he's got plenty of time left to learn and grow. So that should sort of hold him in good stead. Now, with regards to the Showtime card, unfortunately, yet again, because it wasn't shown on UK soil, I had a stream that I watched a little bit of. The last bit I saw was the Elvis Gomez fight, whereby I thought he would take out, what was the guy's name? I think his name was Trevor Mitchell. I think his name was Trevor Mitchell. If that's wrong, apologies. Again, it wasn't really something I was checking, to be honest, but yeah, Elvis ended up losing. I think he got dropped early in the fight. The guy, I think he was 15 0-1 or 15-1, but no, it's 15-1, but he had 1 KO from those 15 wins, and Elvis Gomez was 6-0 with 5 KOs. So obviously he was the prospect, the Cuban guy, sort of Cuban southpaw, was supposed to be sort of the next big thing, but he got beat by majority decision, I think it was, which was a shock to me. I didn't actually expect him to lose that fight, but to be fair to to his opponent, he done his thing. I only saw like the last two rounds of that fight, but yeah, he had Joe Goosen in the corner, so maybe that's not a great glowing reference on Goosen at the minute, but yeah, ultimately I saw about 2 full rounds of Jaron Ennis, and my stream was buffering, so like I just kept kind of seeing in between, so I was just having to kind of look on Twitter to see sort of what the deal was. They need to obviously sort that out in terms of a UK broadcast. Do the UK YouTube like they've done on previous bouts. I don't see why that shouldn't be the case, or sell it to Fight like they used to do that quite often. For some reason they're not giving any fights to the Fight platform anymore, which is weird. Or worst case scenario, they've worked with DAZN for the Garcia and Tank fight. Give the international rights to DAZN. I'm sure DAZN will pay a premium. I'm not a big premium, but I'm sure they'll pay a premium for sort of the UK and Australia rights, or the European rights, or whatever, for that action to be on the platform. Yeah, to me it makes perfect sense. I don't know why they wouldn't, but they need to obviously get some eyes on their people outside of the US, especially if they want to make, or they want to garner the right interest to make the necessary money that they claim at. So now obviously you got to wonder if all of the recent PBC cards have not been taking place on UK soil. What's going to happen with Spencer Crawford? Are they gonna do the deal with Fight for that? Are they gonna do a deal with DAZN to put that on that DAZN pay-per-view over here? Sky Sports gonna pick it up? I'm assuming Sky Sports probably can't, because they've got the exclusive deal with ESPN and Top Rank. Will BT Sports pick it up, or TNT Sports as it's called now? I'm not sure. That being said, from what I did see, like Jaron Ennis looked like it was a punch perfect performance. I said I felt it would probably go the distance, but if not, it would be a late stoppage from Ennis. I think I said round 11. I think I said 10 or 11. Well, it ended in the 10th round. I haven't seen the amount of damage that Via took in the fight overall, so I can't comment on whether it was left to go too long or not. But from all accounts of the people on Twitter, and from what I've heard, yeah, they said that fight could have been stopped several rounds earlier, because there was no need for Via to take that kind of punishment. But look, Boots does his thing. He said that he said he'd happily fight Stanionis next, but he wants the winner of the Spence Crawford. But we know that chances are there will be the rematch if that takes place. So he might have to keep busy with a Stanionis, or like a Butayev or a Keith Thurman or a Ugas. He said he's ready for all of them. So good performance, I guess. He's back to sort of winning ways. It wasn't a Karen Chikatsian type fight this time, and that's the second time he's been out this year. Hopefully he can get another fight in towards sort of October, November time, and that will land him in good stead. That will be a good level of activity, keeping him sharp and ready for all the challenges and trials of 2024. Stanionis, I feel like he probably needs a keep busy to just get on to a card and get active, and then maybe he can fight Boots at the end of the year. So maybe if he can get a little something in August, just a little run out, and then fight Boots in like November, December time, that sounds like a good plan to me. But yeah, I guess the only other last thing to talk about really from the weekend is obviously the DAZN and Anthony Joshua and Dillian White 2 pay-per-view price. Now obviously I addressed this in the previous video. The pay-per-view is $26.99, but if you are not a DAZN subscriber, whether the monthly $9.99 package or the one-off payment that you make for £99, I think it was, then you have to pay for the subscription for the month as well as the pay-per-view, which does come up to about $46.98. Initially I wasn't sure if that was how it was going to be, but I did state in the other video I think that's how they said it has to be. You have to have a subscription. So with that being said, look, I've had arguments about this with a couple of people over the last day, and my position on it is quite clear. Like, I don't think it's right. I think it is a piss take. But that being said, DAZN did say back when they started doing the pay-per-views last year that you had to be a subscriber to pay that amount. So you have to be a subscriber in order to purchase the pay-per-views. If you're not a subscriber, then you have to buy the month subscription to be able to purchase the pay-per-view. Now obviously if you are paying $9.99 a month for it, then realistically I think it's a bit, if you're paying the $9.99, it's not really adequate or correct to then say, oh well, now I'm actually paying like $36.98, because really and truly that $9.99 is for your monthly subscription anyway. It's like when Disney Plus, you know, if you was a monthly subscriber, and I mean I've always paid annual for Disney Plus, but you know, monthly subscriber, it was what, $6.99, $7.99. But then when they started doing the Disney the Disney Plus Premiere stuff, and you had to pay like, you know, £11 or something to buy a film that was going to be out in the cinema as well, but you could buy it from home. Well, that's not you paying extra for your for that subscription itself. That's just you paying an additional price for a premium content. So with that being said, like, I get 40, you know, for that particular time it's like, oh, £47. But really and truly, it's still only the pay-per-view is the $26.98, because you're still getting the rest of the month for the other £20. So it's not just paying and obviously if you don't use that month, then fine, then yeah, you've essentially paid £47 for this pay-per-view, and you're venturing very closely to US pricing, which is not great. But ultimately, the best thing to do would be to buy the monthly subscription, say at the start or at the end of July, and then go all the way through to the end of August and get 4 or 5 good quality weeks of action. That to me makes the most sense. Or if you buy it, then hopefully there will be enough events on for the rest of that month for you to have got the money's worth from the other £20. But yeah, look, I get it. It's not a great thing, but ultimately, like me, like a lot of people, or I guess a lot of, you know, paid for the yearly subscription, just the yearly $99.99 or whatever it was. That was the smartest choice to do. It's a one-off payment. Yes, it's £100 then and there, but then you don't have to worry about anything for the next 12 months, and anything that you decide to pay on top is just an expense, is just a one-off expense for that month. It doesn't factor into any other costings. I mean, look, it's the same with BT Sport and Sky Sports. Now, I'm not sure if their box office channels are actually separate to their actual subscriptions now. I know they haven't always been. They might be now, but if that's the case, then obviously DAZN need to figure out a workaround to allow people to just sort of jump in for that one moment, that one day, and then jump back out, but then also have the subscriptions for the others. But I think the thing for me that is more of an issue with that is not even so much the price point for that one. It's the fact that the week before that, they've got another pay-per-view, which is Jake Paul versus Nate Diaz. That one I think is £20 over here, and I think might be £50 or $50 in the US with your subscription. That is, to me, is where the issue is. You've got 2 pay-per-views back-to-back weeks. That's one week. That's an employee's calendar month. So in one calendar month, from the same people, from the same paycheck, you've got to to me, that's where the issue is, and that's particularly where I would say they need to do better. You've got to be able to space these things out so that people aren't as disadvantaged, because that's when you say, oh, now we're getting into sort of almost like a £70 month if you've never had a DAZN subscription, because surely they're both going to be similar price points. So yeah, like that's where I think they need to sort something out, especially for this particular moment, because that one in itself isn't looking good. But in general terms, if you've got the subscription, it's just an extra additional charge on top. Again, not great. No one wants to pay pay-per-view. I don't necessarily want to pay it, and I may not. I haven't decided yet. But all I do know is it ain't going to cost me anything additional, because I paid for the yearly subscription back in January. And that's ultimately, I think, what people need to do if they're really interested in this boxing and other sports platforms. But I guess the main thing is going to have to be sort of what other sports they manage to get onto the platform like next year and the year after, and how they keep expanding it. But yeah, look, that's enough for me for the time being. I'm going to go hit the gym, relax off a little bit. But thank you very much for watching. I'm not sure if there's going to be any other videos this week, potentially. We'll see. But yeah, big up. Thanks for watching. I will catch you some point next week. Breakdown on Tuesday. I'll see as much as I can get out. And yeah, thanks for watching. Speak to you next time.